Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Marvel Crisis Protocol roster building video. And yeah, today we're going to be trying out a different type of list here. We are doing a team where every single model on the team has some form of extract, steal, or drop, or something to that effect. And yeah, we're going to see how it goes. I think this might actually end up being one of the more competitive lists on this series, but at the end of the day, it's probably still a little overkill for a competitive scene. But we're going to try it out and see how things go. I do also just want to make a quick little channel update note here with this video that normally we've been doing these only once a month until now, but I think I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to start doing these twice a month and then just one less character spotlight because they do come out on the same day. Just because these videos seem to be things you guys are enjoying a lot more. These typically do a lot better than the character spotlight. So that series isn't going away or anything like that, but I am going to kind of play around with the ratio of roster building to character spotlight and see if you guys are enjoying that more. But if you're a huge fan of the character spotlights and you want to make sure that we're getting the same amount of those that we were before, let me know down below and we'll jump back and continue playing around with that until we can find a balance that's good for everyone. But yeah, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into the list building here. So I think the logical start for this is going to be a Web Warriors focused list with Miles as the leader, just because Miles has a steal on his card there. So we're going to start out with him, and then we're going to take the other two Web Warrior characters that have a steal on their own card, notably Spider-Woman, who has a spender that's gonna drop objectives, and Black Cat. And that, I believe, is the highest number of steals in a single affiliation is those three. So basically every single game you play with this roster, you're going to have to bring these three models, and then from there you're going to, play around to make the threats work. So that's going to be our baseline there, and then we're going to go ahead and start picking our other models. All right, so I don't think you can really talk about building a list that's focused around objective steals without talking about Dr. Voodoo. He's probably one of the most effective droppers in the game. So yeah, he's definitely earning a spot on this list here because his is really good still. All right, the next model we're going to include here is actually a newer model. We're going to throw Neymar in here. He has a drop on his spender attack here, very similar to Miles or Spider-Woman's. And he also gives us a little bit of threat variety with the 5 threat slot. So Neymar is going to take that 5th slot in the roster here. Next, we're going to grab two of the other steals that do exist in the game. One of them being Enchantress. Enchantress is going to be also an interesting one because she's going to add some degree of control with that Siren's Call there. So there's a couple other things she's adding to this list that I think are interesting. But of course, the Amora's Kiss is really the reason why we're adding her here. So we're going to go ahead and throw Enchantress in the roster. And then here's one that not very many people bring, but we're going to bring out Original Human Torch. Because he does have this little actually action-free objective drop on it, and so yeah, that's actually a really strong objective drop. Of course, unfortunately, the same cannot be said for Original Human Torch just as a model, but it is a really strong ability and definitely fits the theme. So that is giving us what 7 characters that have objective drops on their own card. Now we're gonna go ahead and take a look at some characters that can do it with tactics cards. Going into tactics card steals, I think the first one is just Rhino. I mean, he's kind of the OG. Robbery is weaker than it was before, obviously going up to 4 power. It's a little bit harder to use as consistently, but Rhino is still a really solid piece, and that still is an amazing card. So we're going to throw Rhino in as our next slot. For our slot after that, there's a good consideration here between a couple of models. The ones that I'm mainly considering here are Shadowcat, who also has a steal on a tactics card, but it's not quite as consistent as the other model, which I'm thinking about, which is Pyro, who also has a steal coming in from a tactics card. Now, there is an argument to just include both in the list, which actually, when I was making the test version of this list, I did, but that does give us one issue, and that is when we hit 20 threat, and exactly 20 threat. Anything under 20 threat is totally fine. But when we're playing at 20 threat here, We have a 10 threat core of 3 web warriors, which means our other models cannot exceed, 2 models. So at 19 threat, we can do Namor and say Voodoo, or Namor and Enchantress, or Namor and Rhino. Has to have Namor either way at this point. But once we hit 20, unfortunately, we don't have another 5 threat. So we kind of run into a weird problem with this list where 20 threat becomes a bit of a problematic threat value for us here. So there are a few different ways that you could approach this. You could add just a non-objective steel character, or maybe there's one that I'm missing that does solve this problem, like another 5 threat character or even a 6 threat character that has an objective steel. But unfortunately, without being able to do that, you will have to bring in a model that doesn't have a steel of some form. So that is a little unfortunate because every other threat value in the game does work out. But yeah, 20 is just a little awkward here. Yeah, so unfortunately, after spending some more time looking at this, I can't think of any way of solving this issue. I can't think of a single 6 threat or another 5 threat that has some form of objective drop or steal on them. So unfortunately, this is just the world we're living in of avoiding 20 threat at all costs. And if we're playing 20 threat, then I guess we're playing unaffiliated. So yeah, that is kind of the world we're living in there, unfortunately. So here is our list of characters. Let's go ahead and start building out some tactics cards. All right, so first things first, we are planning on playing Web Warriors, and All Webbed Up is just a good card, so we're definitely going to want to be bringing that along with us, because, yeah, good card, we want that here. Aunt May's Wheat Cake could be interesting if we get into the mirror or something like that, so it's always a good idea to have that as an option, so we're going to include that as well. For restricted cards, I definitely think we like the sound of Brace. Brace is just kind of my go-to for most lists, so we're going to throw Brace in there because it's a good card. We're also going to take Fallback for that matter because Fallback is just another generically good card that we happen to like. It's going to help us kind of run away with those extracts a little bit better, so we're definitely a big fan of that. For our next card, anyone who's been watching the channel knows, for a while knows that I am a big sucker for bodyguard style tech. So Prince's Protection just has to make this list for me. Whether it's actually the best card for the list or not 100% sure, but it has to be in for me. In addition to that, we're gonna have Pyrotechnics here because that is how Pyro gets his drops, so that's kind of important. For that matter, we're also going to want to make sure we have This Is a Robbery, which should be just down here a little bit. There it is. So that's going to give Rhino his drop online as well, which is pretty important. We're also going to want to bring Hold Still here. So Shadowcat has access to her objective steal here. So yeah, we will need that one as well. Bringing us up to 8. We still have an open restricted slot, and I think there's some valid arguments behind a couple of your options remaining here. Personally, I think I'm going to lean towards Sacrifice, but I do think Patch Up would be a very reasonable option as well. And with 1 slot remaining, I think it makes sense just to go for something relatively generic and good. So personally, I'm going to pick Recalibration Matrix here because Recal is a good card and I like it. So we're going to do that. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and get on to Crises next. All right, so for Crises, we're going to be mainly focusing on our extracts here, and of course, we're going to be very careful not to pick anything that's 20 threat, because if we have that ability, we're going to avoid that at all costs. So while Scrolls would probably be a pretty decent objective for this list, we're not going to be including it because that 20 threat is a bit of a problem. On the other hand, we are probably happy to include some stuff like Senators. We're not going to be going super wide, so we're never going to be able to pick up all 6 Senators at the same time, but we will be able to make it so that our opponent is almost never holding Senators, and that's going to be really solid. So we're going to be able to take advantage of the crazy amount of drops there. Similarly, I think we're going to really like ones where we can hold more than 1 token because we can drop more than 1 token in that case as well and pick them all up with the same character sounds like a great thing. So I think Struggle for the Cube is a logical next pick there. And then after Struggle for the Cube, we have kind of some solid options here. I mean, Spider Infected is another one that has 5, so that's a pretty great choice for us. There's stuff like Hammers, which could be interesting. I think personally it's between Spider Infected and Paranoia. Paranoia is also really, really solid for a lot of different reasons, but I think we're going to go with Spider Infected here. I just think that kind of fits the theme of what we're going for a little bit better. As far as secures go, once again, we want to avoid that 20 threat at all costs. So unfortunately, Super Red Scoundrels would probably be really, really good for us, but 20 threat is not so much. So I'm going to stay away from that one. And we're going to pick some other just kind of generally wider scenarios, faster scoring. Personally, I like Infinity Formula a lot. It's going to give us power to have those steals online a little bit more often as well. So that's going to be really, really nice for us there. Similarly, Mutant Madmen, I mean, it's going to do the opposite power-wise, but again, it's just a little bit more of a wider scenario. And then, as much as I personally don't enjoy playing on the D maps, I think it makes sense to include one of the D maps here. Probably Portals. I think Portals makes a lot of sense here, especially since we can kind of do the Rhino thing of like start Rhino, contesting a portal and do. Oh no, that's not the one I'm thinking of. I'm thinking Cosmic Invasion, which we can't actually play Rhino there because of the threat, so that doesn't actually work for us. So there's actually an argument for a couple of these here. I'm gonna think about this one for a second. Okay, even though we unfortunately can't make the Rhino strategy work with it, we are still going to pick Cosmic Invasion here, just because I think we can kind of mitigate that push a little better than a lot of teams, especially with that extra power. And of course, that power will be great for putting our steals online. So I think we are going to pick Cosmic Invasion for that one. And that is our scenario list and our entire list created. So we're going to go ahead and go over the whole thing now. Alrighty, so going over the full list here, our characters include Spider-Man Miles Morales, Spider-Woman Jessica Drew, Black Cat Felicia Hardy, Doctor Voodoo, Namor the Submariner, Enchantress, the original Human Torch, Rhino, Pyro, and Shadowcat. Going into tactics cards, we have All Webbed Up and Aunt May's Weak Case for our Web Warriors cards. Our restricted slots are Brace and Sacrifice. For character cards, we have Princess Protection, Pyrotechnics, This is a Robbery, and Hold Still. And then for generics, we have Fallback and Recalibration Matrix. Going into Crises, we are running Mutant Extremist Target U.S. Senators for our extracts, we are running Mutant Extremist Target U.S. Senators, Struggle for the Cube Continues, and Spider Infected Invade Manhattan. Very good with words today, guys. For our secures, we have Infinity Formula Goes Missing, Mutant Madmen turns city into lethal amusement park, and Cosmic Invasion Black Order descends on Earth. So yeah, this seems like it would be a really interesting list. Definitely something that can be annoying for your opponent to play into. They're just never allowed to hold their own objectives for longer than like a turn at best, because everyone in the list will just drop them. I actually think it does reasonably well at keeping up with an attrition game too. You have things like Namor to kind of punch through bulkier models. Miles can hit reasonably hard when he wants to. Spider-Woman can throw out some really annoying conditions and stuff to help slow down your opponent's attrition. So you've got some really, really solid pieces here for a lot of different kind of cases. I actually think you can probably make a pretty decent showing with this list. Just by having, this list is kind of, here's a bunch of stuff that's good, and Enchantress and Human Torch are also here. um but even then, like, I think a lot of people sleep on Enchantress. She's not as bad as people think, and original Human Torch does have an incredibly good objective drop, just not so much the rest of his card, unfortunately. But yeah, I do think this list has a lot of potential. I actually really like this, and I'm curious to try it out at some point in the near future. So maybe in a near future battle report, we'll try something like this out and see how just Steals Go works out. But that is going to do it for this roster building video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please do drop a like down below. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. We do character spotlights and roster building videos and things like that during the week. And then we got battle reports and things like that on the weekends. So if you're a fan of any of that sort of thing, feel free to jump on in. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Are there things you would have done differently, characters you would have included that I didn't, characters you wouldn't have included that I did? I'm definitely curious to hear what your guys' thoughts there. Same thing for tactics cards. Do you guys like the generic choices? Would you have maybe swapped out some of the character cards? I mean, these three were kind of non-optional, but what would your guys' choices for restricteds been? That sort of thing. Definitely curious. Same for scenarios. As many of you guys know, I don't play very many like super extract focused lists. So maybe I picked the worst of all scenarios for this. So very curious to hear how you guys might have done this a little differently. And also let me know if I'm a total idiot and there was a 5 threat or a 6 threat that was super obvious for this that could have fixed all of the 20 threat problems, because that would be great. That would make this list so much better, and yeah, I'd be a lot happier with its final state if it could play at every threat value. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this one. So until next time, I hope you guys enjoyed once more. Have a great day, everybody. Peace.